Secondary consumers always depend on the primary consumers. Biotic are the ones that have life, they are the living organisms. Abiotic are the ones that do not have life, they are the non-living organisms. So autotrophs are the ones, they are the plants which are capable of synthesizing their own food. So tertiary consumers are the organisms that depend on the secondary consumers for the food. Everyone, a warm welcome to today's session on Environmental Studies for second semester BCom. I'm Dr. Divya, Environmental Studies faculty, Vidhyaashram First Grade College, Temple of Excellence, MYSURU. So in today's session, let us discuss about Unit 2, that is Ecosystem. So we all know that ecosystem is very important in order to maintain a balance in the environment. And in an ecosystem, we find different types of organisms as well as the biotic and the abiotic factors included, wherein they interact with one another and live in harmony for a good survival. So this chapter mainly deals with how the organisms depend on one another for the survival. In today's session, let us discuss about what is an ecosystem and let us learn the components of an ecosystem, wherein we'll study the structure and function of the ecosystem. So what is an ecosystem? So an ecosystem is a geographical area wherein a community of living organisms. So when I say living organisms means they are the biotic factors. So biotic factors, bio means life. So those organisms having life, that is the living organisms, they come under the biotic factors. They interact with the abiotic factors. So when I say abiotic, always remember in biology or be it any science related subject, especially related to biology, wherein if I say biotic, it means life, or it is having life, or it is living. And in front of this biotic, if I add a, meaning abiotic, it means no life or it is non-living. So that is the difference here. So we have opposites, right? How you learn opposites in English grammar. Just like that, here the opposite of biotic is abiotic. Biotic are the ones that have life, they are the living organisms. Abiotic are the ones that do not have life, they are the non-living organisms. So here there is an interaction. In an ecosystem, there is an interaction between the biotic factors, that is the living organisms, with that of the abiotic factors, that is the non-living things, such as the light, that is the sunlight, the temperature, air and water, in order to survive properly or live in harmony, therefore forming a biome. So what is an ecosystem? An ecosystem is a geographical area wherein a community of biotic and abiotic factors interact with each other in order to live in harmony, therefore forming a biome. So who coined this term ecosystem? So the term ecosystem was coined by A.G. Tansley. So he was an English botanist. So this person in the year 1935, he actually coined the term ecosystem. So the credit goes to A.G. Tansley. So moving further, let us study about the structure of the ecosystem. So in this session, we shall concentrate on the structure and function of the ecosystem, wherein function of ecosystem will continue with that in the next session as well. So talking about the structure of ecosystem, so the ecosystem is broadly divided into abiotic factors and biotic factors. The definition itself says, right, the interaction between the abiotic and the biotic factors in an environment or in a given geographical area forms the ecosystem, right? So here there are abiotic factors involved, biotic factors involved. So abiotic factors means we have the air, the sunlight, then we have the temperature, water, the soil, All these comes under the abiotic factors. Next, biotic factors. Again, these biotic factors are nothing but the living organisms. They are again divided into producers, consumers, decomposers. Producers, when I say producers, it means they produce something, right? How do they produce? They produce energy by deriving energy from the sunlight. So they are the producers. So we have the producers, then we have the consumers and the decomposers. So again the consumers is divided. So under the producers, the best example is the plants. The green plants will be the producers. Those organisms which feed on the green plants or the producers will be the consumers. Consuming means to eat, right? So that is why they are the consumers. So they will be the herbivores. So most of the herbivores will be the consumers. What are herbivores? Herbivores are those animals. So in the word itself it says herbivorous. So herb means something related to the plants, the green plant. Vorous means to eat something, to devour something, to eat something. So those organisms which eat plants are called as herbivores. So they are the consumers. And next, under consumers, again it is divided into three types, which we will see later on. Next, we have under biotic factors, again decomposers. Decomposition, to decay something, right? The best decomposers that we have in the environment is the microorganisms such as the bacteria, the fungi and all that, which are the saprophytes. And also we have the detritus. So detritus is nothing but those organisms such as the earthworm. Earthworms also help in decomposition, right? They help in decomposition and increasing the fertility of the soil. So they come under the detritus. So all these come under the decomposers. So the biotic factors are producers, consumers and decomposers. Again in consumers, when I said consumers, they are the organisms which eat onto something, right? They are again divided into primary consumers. So primary consumers are nothing but the herbivores. Herbivores. So as I told you, the herbivores that are there, herbivores, they are the ones which feed on the green plants. So they directly feed on the producers. They are the herbivores. Next comes the secondary consumers. So the secondary consumers are nothing but the primary carnivores. So the carnivores are the ones which actually feed on the herbivores. Carnivores are the ones which eat the herbivores. And next, again in consumers, we have the tertiary consumers. Again here, or the secondary carnivores are there. Say for example, man can come under the secondary carnivore because he is a omnivore as well. He feeds on the green plants as well as he feeds on the meat, right? So therefore man is one of the best examples for tertiary consumers or secondary carnivores. So this is how the structure of the ecosystem is framed. So let's study about each of these factors one by one. So first, talking about the structure of an ecosystem, wherein I told you it is split into two main components, the abiotic components and the biotic components. Abiotic components are the non-living components and the biotic components are the living components which have life. So talking about these two, what are the abiotic components and what is their role in the environment or the ecosystem, let's look into. So abiotic components, they are the non-living components of an ecosystem such as air, water, soil, minerals, even sunlight, temperature, nutrients, the wind, the altitude, turbidity. Now, how all these are interconnected. So, air is required for an organism's survival because air contains a lot of gaseous substances which is needed for photosynthesis of the plant. Say for example, air contains carbon dioxide. That carbon dioxide is needed for the plants to photosynthesize, that is to manufacture their own food or to produce their own food. And only if enough amount of carbon dioxide is available in the air, then only the plants can photosynthesize, right? So that will lead to survival of the plants. If the plants survive, then the herbivores will survive. That is, the consumers will survive. Why will they survive? Because they will get enough amount of plants to feed on. So that is how they are interdependent on one another. Water. Water is also needed for the proper growth and development of the plant as well as soil. Soil is also needed in order to provide nutrients and all that to the plant, and also minerals are very important for the plants. Likewise, there is sunlight. Sunlight is needed for the plants because plants cannot photosynthesize in the absence of sunlight. So therefore, air and sunlight together, they are very important. Water also is needed for photosynthesis, because without water also plants cannot photosynthesize, because plants usually make use of the sun's energy in order to convert carbon dioxide, and water will be formed in order to convert it into food, that is glucose. So that is why we need air, water as well as sunlight. Three are very, very important. And temperature is also needed for the plants. And then nutrients are very important. Wind, altitude, altitude. Say for example, it is the different locations in which the plants are there. So that also, different altitudes will have different climatic conditions. So therefore that also, it will affect or it will improve the quality of the plant as well. So all these are interconnected to one another. So all these abiotic factors are very, very important if the biotic factors have to survive. So all these non-living things are very, very important if the living things have to survive. So that is how they are interconnected to one another. So that is why in nature we are not supposed to disturb one thing, because if one thing is disturbed, then the other will also be disturbed. So that is why, or it may lead to the complete destruction or extinction of another organism. So that is why. So next, talking about the biotic components. So biotic components refer to all life in an ecosystem, that is the all living forms that are there in an ecosystem. So based on nutrition, biotic components, so based on what they feed on to, or based on nutrition, the biotic components are categorized into producers, consumers and decomposers. So let's study about each of these one by one. Talking about producers. So producers include all autotrophs. So autotrophs, what do you mean by autotrophs? Auto means self. You have automobiles, right, which are capable of moving on its own. That you just ignite the engine and it is capable of moving. It is self. That is auto, right? Therefore, auto means self. So autotrophs are the ones, they are the plants which are capable of synthesizing their own food. Are we human beings autotrophs? No. Why? Because standing here, can I synthesize my own food? Not possible. I'll have to go somewhere, eat something, right? That is why we are heterotrophs. Animals are heterotrophs because standing in their position, they cannot synthesize their own food. They'll have to depend on other organisms for energy, for food. So therefore, they are heterotrophs. But that is not in the case of plants. Will plants walk to another place and eat food like how animals and we do? No, right? Where they are there itself, they will synthesize their own food by making use of the sun's energy. So therefore, they are autotrophs. So producers include all autotrophs such as the plants. So all the green plants or all the plants that are there in the world, they come under the producers. So therefore, they are called the autotrophs as they can produce their own food through the process called as photosynthesis. So what is photosynthesis? Photo means light here. Synthesis is to prepare or to synthesize, right? So they are preparing their own food or they are synthesizing their own food by making use of the sunlight energy. That is the process of photosynthesis. So therefore, since plants can photosynthesize on their own, they are called as the autotrophs. And consequently, all other organisms that are coming in the higher trophic levels of the food chain, they rely on the producers for food. So they will become the consumers. So therefore, all other organisms, that is the heterotrophs, which feed on these green plants or which depend on these green plants, they will become the consumers. So next, let's study about the consumers. What are the consumers? So consumers are also called as heterotrophs. Consuming. We are heterotrophs. We consume food in order to gain energy. Animals are heterotrophs. They consume the green plants in order to gain energy. They consume another animal in order to gain energy, right? So therefore, consumers are heterotrophs, wherein they are the organisms that depend on other organisms in order to get food for energy purpose. So consumers are further classified into primary consumers, secondary consumers and tertiary consumers. So what are these? Let's look into. So primary consumers. So primary consumers always they will be the herbivores. Why are they the primary consumers? Because soon after the producers, that is the green plants, they are the ones that are going and eating on the green plant or eating the green plant, feeding on the green plant. So they will be the primary consumers there. So therefore, they are called as the herbivorous animals. They are the primary consumer and they usually depend on producers for their food. So what are the producers here? They are the green plants or the autotrophs. Next, talking about secondary consumers. So secondary consumers always depend on the primary consumers. What are the primary consumers here? They are the herbivores. So herbivorous animals are always eaten by the carnivorous animals, right? Carnivorous animals therefore form the secondary consumers. Now, here you have to note one thing. When one organism is feeding on another, energy is passed into each of these organisms. So, all that we shall study in the function of the ecosystem in the coming session. So, here either the primary consumer can be carnivorous or it can be an omnivorous. So, carnivorous means those which feed on the herbivorous animals. That is the plant-eating animals. Omnivorous animals means those which feed on both the herbivorous animals, that is the plant-eating animals, as well as they also feed on the carnivorous animals. So, we human beings, we are omnivorous. Lion also they are omnivorous because lion they will eat a herbivorous animal as well as they will feed on to the carnivorous animal, right? So that is why lion is a omnivorous animal, one of the example. So this is how the secondary consumers can either be a carnivorous animal or a omnivorous animal. So next, talking about tertiary consumers. So tertiary consumers are the organisms that depend on the secondary consumers for the food. What were the secondary consumers? The primary consumers were the plant-eating animals, that is the herbivores. The secondary consumers were the meat-eating animals, that is they can be either the carnivorous or they can be omnivorous. So here the secondary consumers, that is the carnivorous organisms that feed on the secondary consumers, that is the carnivorous, they are called as the tertiary consumers. So tertiary consumers can be an omnivorous animal as well. Omnivorous animals are the ones that feed on those carnivorous as well as on the herbivorous. So that is why tertiary consumers can be the omnivorous animals. Next, again higher level, it can increase. That is quaternary consumers. So quaternary consumers are the ones, these quaternary consumer, it is not necessary that these quaternary consumers will be present in all the food chains. Only in some of the food chains they will be present. So they're present in only some of the food chains. And these organisms, they feed on tertiary consumers for energy. That is, they feed only on the omnivorous for energy. Say for example, we have vultures. Vultures, they feed on the dead organisms that are there. Vultures can be put under the quaternary consumers. So these organisms prey on tertiary consumers for energy. That is, they prey on the omnivorous for energy, and they are usually at the top of the food chain and they have no natural predators. So quaternary consumers, as I told you, they are not found in all the forms of ecosystem or in all the food chains. Only in few of the food chains you can find the quaternary consumers. Say for example, in an aquatic food chain, I can say the whales are the quaternary, the sharks are the quaternary consumers. So like that, only in some of the food chains they are present. So these are the different types of biotic components that are there. So next, talking about the last biotic component, that is the decomposers. So decomposers are the ones that decompose the organic material. So all these primary consumers, that is, or the producers, the green plants, the primary consumers, the secondary consumers, the tertiary consumers, the quaternary consumers, all these at the end, they have to die, right? They are not immortal. They need to die. So when they die and they decay into the soil, right? So when they decay in the soil, how do they decay? They decay because of the presence of these decomposers. So decomposers include the saprophytes. So saprophytes are the organisms which grow on dead and decaying organic matter, helping them to decompose. So they are the fungi and the bacteria. They are the decomposers. So fungi, we have mushroom is one of the best decomposer, and we have various other fungi also, and also bacteria. These are the microorganisms that help in decomposition. So those organisms that help in decomposition, they are called as the saprophytes. And these saprophytes, they directly live on the dead and decaying organic matter. And decomposers are very, very essential for the balancing of an ecosystem. Otherwise, what would have happened? Say, for example, all the organisms, be it we human beings, animals, the green plants, say the producers, the consumers, each and every living organism or biotic component in this world, they tend to die after a certain period once their lifespan comes to end, right? So when they die, imagine if these decomposers were not there, all the living organisms would be dead on this planet, and this planet would be filled with dead animals, dead birds, dead insects, dead humans, right? But we have to thank the decomposers because they are the ones that keep the environment clean. Because they decompose, they grow on dead and decaying organic matter, decomposing the dead animals, plants and all that. That is why the environment is clean. Because the environment is clean, we are not suffering from some serious illness and all that. Otherwise, the environment would be stinking to such an extent that it would not be possible for any of the organisms to inhabit it, right? So that is why decomposers are quite essential for the ecosystem, as they not just keep the environment clean, but by their mechanism of decomposing or rotting that particular substance or living organism that is dead, they help in recycling nutrients to be reused by the plants. So what they do is, say for example, here we have the producers. So what are the producers? The producers are the green plants. The green plants. So these producers will be eaten by, as I told you, they are eaten by the consumers, right? So consumers will be the herbivores. The herbivores will be feeding on the producers. Next, these consumers will be eaten by the primary consumers. I'll just write in short form. Primary consumers will be eaten by the secondary consumers. So these secondary consumers are nothing but they are the carnivores. The carnivores will be eaten by the tertiary consumers. So the tertiary consumers are nothing but the omnivores. Now all these organisms are there, right? So everything at the end of the day, they will die. All these, they tend to die. Nothing is immortal. As I told you, they will die. When they die, they need to decay. So if they need to decay and rot and merge with the soil, then the decomposers are needed. So that is a function of the decomposers, that is the saprophytes, fungi and the bacteria. So if they don't decay, what would happen? All these dead organisms would be lying, the body of the dead organisms would be lying everywhere, and therefore it would have created a lot of problem to the environment. But it is because of these decomposers, they decay. When they decay, what happens? They will add to the nutrient in the soil. They will add nutrients to the soil. These nutrients will be utilized by the producers. Again, the producers will grow properly, it will be eaten by the consumers, and again when all of them die, they will add on to the nutrient to the soil. Again, it will be utilized by the producers. Like this, the cycle circulates in an ecosystem. So therefore, for the proper nutrient cycling in an ecosystem, decomposers are very, very important here. So all this we shall study in the functions of the ecosystem. So next, talking about the function of ecosystem. So the function of ecosystem is to allow the flow of energy and cycling of materials or nutrients in order to make sure that, or in order to maintain a stability of the ecosystem and continuity of life on this earth or in the ecosystem. So as I told you, for the life to continue, a cycle or a web has to be formed like this, wherein we have the, say for example, we have the green plants. So the green plants here will be the producers. These green plants are eaten by the herbivores. The herbivores are eaten by the carnivores. Again, these herbivores are eaten by the carnivores. Again, these carnivores are eaten by the omnivores. So like that it continues, and at the end of the day all of these will die, including the plant. They will also die. So all the nutrients will get added to the soil itself, right? These will again be utilized by the green plants itself, and the cycle will continue. So therefore energy is flowing from one organism to another organism. So this is the main function of the environment, to make sure that the energy is properly flowing from one organism to another organism, so that, and also the nutrients are cycling properly, so that the stability of the environment or the ecosystem can be maintained. So therefore the function of an ecosystem can be studied under the following broad classifications are energy flow, nutrient cycling, and ecological succession. So in energy flow, we shall study about, especially that is the energy flow. They have given the food chain and the food web. So how in a food chain and food web the energy flows? This is an example of a food web. So in detail in the coming session we shall study about it, and they have also given about ecological succession. So we'll study about energy flow and ecological succession because that is the one that is mentioned in the syllabus. So in the next coming session, we'll continue with studying the functions of the ecosystem, wherein under that we'll specifically study about the energy flow in an ecosystem, wherein we'll study food chain and food web, and also we'll study about the ecological succession. So we shall meet again in the coming session with these three topics. Thank you.